First of all, welcome. Welcome to this guide to the Garmin Round Denmark Race. I am happy to have so many people on the call here, and we will do our utmost to give you a good presentation today. During the call, you are welcome to ask questions either in the IM chat or verbally on the call in your local language. So we will do our best to apply to that one. With me on the call, I have Hansen, who is a very seasonal single-hand sailor as well. And Jan, he will be covering a lot of the stuff on single-hand. And together we will do the double hand, and together we will do the full crew session. So what we will do here is that we will first of all give some introduction as we have started here. Then we will focus on preparation, and the preparation is very similar despite if you say single hand, double hand, or multi-crew, safety training, personal equipment, technique, and contact with the shore crew and checklists, and all these things are very similar to the different type of sailing. But then we will go more into details with single hand, because Garmin Round Denmark is a long race, and sailing single-handed is more difficult than double-handed, and double-handed is more difficult than multi-crew. So there are different things that you should think about there. And then, of course, there's a lot of option to ask questions during the session. So don't hold back, ask the question either in the IM window or be verbal. It seems like we have a good connection here, so we can do the verbal interaction as well. So without any further ado, before starting, it is important for us to thank the team behind the Garmin Round Denmark, Thomas from Aarhus International Sailing Center, Jon Hansen from Sailing Aarhus, Morten Brandt, and of course also the sponsor, Daniel. But none of this would be any good without all the volunteers helping these guys making an event possible like this Garmin Round Denmark. So it's important that we thank these guys for making this possible for us. Without the volunteers and without guys like these 4 people here, we wouldn't have a show going on and a race like this going on. So it is important that we are here together, because these guys, they spend some additional time doing a race like this. Can I please ask you to mute your microphone? I can't see who did it, who has it on. So that's just important for Jan and me to express our thanks and our gratitude to these people. Having said that, Jan, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, okay. First of all, welcome to all of you listening here. We have here the course of the race, the 2 different race courses, the 760 and the sprint distance on 680 miles. This is, I think, a longer race than most people ever go for. As you can see here, probably one of the, I must say, toughest. It could be so, but I would say it's not a really offshore race, but we have a lot of things to consider doing this race. It's in waters where you can meet a lot of traffic. You have not so many open lakes where you can, as a single double hander, relax. You have always to be alert to something on your way around here. Yeah, as you can see here on the schedule on the right, Round Island, that's a really long one. But also when I've been talking to other sailors from around the world, sailing not only this race but also the Vegvisi race, they feel like going for those races here where you have so many waypoints around and so many tight places. They feel it as it is more challenging to do something like this than going for a transatlantic or for any longer ocean races, because you always have to be alert and be prepared. You don't have any weather system which you can rely on that say this will be the weather for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 days. You will always should be ready to see changes in the weather. So So it is a tough one. It's not easy to go in there. But the most important thing even is not maybe the distance of the race. It is to be on the start line on the starting day. A lot of people will miss that. I think more than one will know it could be about 30% or so. It doesn't make the first thing come to the starting line with a prepared boat and a prepared crew. That's important. More important than you would ever imagine. Next slide.
Then we are talking about security. Security is extremely important because, as Jan said, the Garmin Round Denmark is a long race, and a big portion of the race is away from the shore. So you really have to focus on safety. In the notice of race, there are some basic information about safety, but to be honest, you as a crew member or you as the single-handed sailor, you are responsible for a lot of things. So first of all, remember safety lines. A very important recommendation from our side is that all crew members should have an AIS man on board device like the one that is on the right side here. The reason is that if you should drop into the water as single hand or double hand or multi-crew, having a device like that in your life vest means that everybody else can find you in a very short time. You could say, yeah, it's only me, so if I fall overboard, I don't need that device, let me be. But we have had some examples in Vegvisir some years ago where people fell overboard, and then the rescue mission sent out a helicopter, and other racers gave up racing and tried to rescue this person. And then he ended up on the beach on Lolland. So having a device like that just means that everybody else can see where you are. If you drop into the water, they can see you on the plotter. The rescue team can see where you are at any time, having that device on you. So that is just a hardcore recommendation from our side to have a device like that. And it's not only your own safety; it's that making the life easier for everybody else, saving you when you are falling overboard. Another thing is also life jackets. It's recommended that you have a life jacket on board. If you do single hand race, the double hand race, I would say you should have the life jacket on all the time because it is a life-saving device. If it should occur. I know it's not a part of the notice of race, but you as captain on board the ship should really think about that. And then having a plotter with AIS integration is also important because then you can see other boats. You can see AIS and man overboard. You can see everybody else. And last but not least, you should also have an active AIS transponder. It's not just for the competitors who can see you, but it's also a way for the bigger ships to see you, especially when you are in the areas around Fyn and on the north side of Jutland. We will get back to that a little later. By that, Jan, over to you, and then we will talk a little more about the boat and your limitations.
Yeah, I have a short input to the previous slide, and it is actually some people say, okay, it's only me, let me be, I can be out here for myself and go drowning. But you have to think about your relatives, and if they can find your body sooner, they will get the life insurance paid out much before than else. Otherwise it could take some few years. So think about your relatives. Use an AIS transponder. Use your life vest. Next slide. Yeah, about training, boat and limitations. Knowing the boat is, of course, the most essential thing when you are out there. And training is so important. It seems like that the more hours you spend on the water, the more lucky you will get. Or said in another way, you tend to be less unlucky when you get on the water. As it really no matter what the conditions are when you're out there, they could be very, very calm, it can be very rough, whatever it is, you will always learn something about being out there. Maybe only for some few hours as the wind is above 30 knots or so, but you will learn how to reef your boat, put some marks on your halyards, on your reefing lines, make sure that it really works. In calm weather, you can learn a lot about how to distribute the weight in the boat. You can actually learn to sit still, see how really it helps the boat moving. And also, in all conditions when you're out there, Henrik, did the slide move?
No.
Oh, you're the only one on the screen now.
Oh,
yeah, no good. No, but anyway, also it's a good thing to train all kind of maneuvers. When you have found a good way to peel the spinnaker or to set the spinnaker, you really have to stick to doing this. It is so normally when you won't get any smarter when you're tired. So never change a routine which is working for you. That's really important. And coming back to putting marks on all the lines, it really helps you. You can put some life which you can see in glow. It's called glow fast. Some yarns you can see in the dark. That's important stuff. For the reef lines, you put one mark for one reef. You put double mark for second reef, and all kinds of things like that. And also, when you're out there in very rough conditions, it tends to put a lot of stress on your boat. It puts stress on the hardware, it puts stress on the sails. And even though my living is selling some new sails once in a while, you should really, good advice here, but really ruins your sails is when they're out of control, when they're flapping too much. So once again, when you reef the main, really be careful, be prepared when you reef. Again, have the mark, so you lower for the first reef point to the mark. And it's very, very important when reefing the main that you put tension on the halyard before you pull the outhaul. If it is so that you pull the outhaul before you put tension on the luff, you might risk to ruin the main, to pull out some of the travelers in the mainsail. That is absolutely no go to do that. So, and another thing, also when the weather gets rough, it's very, very important to keep the water inside the boat to a minimum. It's not good for the electronics if there gets too much water in the boat. It's especially important for smaller boats because the water will be all over the place down there. In my new boat, I put all the electronics in a watertight box. I learned that from the silver water. Water and electronics is not a good combination. And also good for your comfort when you're down below the boat, that it's not wet all over the stuff. Yeah, and then we have something very special for single double handers, the autopilot. That is a vital piece of equipment. A good autopilot you should have a wireless remote. That would be preferable, and it should be a pilot which is always connected, so you're only one push away for engaging the pilot. And you should test the pilot in all conditions. It should be able to drive your boat downwind at a wind angle about 160 degrees and wind speed above 30 knots. And it takes some time to get used to it, but the pilot should, with the right trim, it really should be able to do so. Most of the good pilots, they have an adjustment where they adjust the rudder movements up against how fast the boat is going. And then you can on lighter boats actually imagine something that the speedo comes out of the water, and then the autopilot thinks the boat are going very slow, and it just adjusts the water very abrupt. So that's kind of things you have to consider, where to get your speed input from when the weather gets rough. You can get it from the speedo, you can get it from the GPS. So, and also you could be able to use the pilot for both tacking and jiving. You should do that by the remote. And also spend a lot of time how to learn how the pilot works, how to learn all the parameters and adjustments. And a good autopilot should be able to save the settings for different scenarios. So, and then also about another condition, other piece of equipment, your chart plotter. That is especially single double-handed, your very, very best friend. You can go closer to the shores with the plotter up in the cockpit. You have a better overview. You have the AAS on your plotter. You can see your competitors. And as an absolute minimum, you should be able to adjust the routes and put in some simple waypoints. I often do so. I plot in the whole route before the start, but often so I say, I'm a little bit taking a chance here. Then I just add a simple waypoint and say, okay, I want to go this way. And then you have to be able to find back to your original routes very, very quickly. And all this is no good if your instruments isn't calibrated. It's not enough to calibrate your depth sounder. That is really not, that is the less important thing you have. But your wind instruments and your speedo and your compass, that should be calibrated. And you can easily spend a day or two just doing that, but it will come back to you. Another piece of equipment I do use a lot, especially before the race, that's some routing software for a PC, so I can make the routing in advance, look at the weather conditions which are to come, give me a hint about which sails I have to prepare, and also if the time and the boat allow me, I could do some routing on the fly. But that's very rare in the small boat I race now. But it's always good to do that. Maybe your shore crew could have the routing as well, help you a bit on your way.
Jan, there's a question from Morten about, do you have a regime, a list of things you should do for testing before sailing? Different things, you know, you said it. Do you have a list of things or?
Yeah, we'll come back to that on a slide later down in the show here. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. When talking about
we have a little issue about the sailing, safety, man overboard training. There's a man overboard mostly for double-handed and fully crewed. But anyway, even going as a single-hander, you should be able to rescue your fellow competitors. And for that purpose, you will need to have a kind of a sling, so you are able to sail around and to get people on board. It's not enough to throw them a line and trying to, you can have them close to, but you have to be able to pull them in your own boat. So that so you can have a rescue sling. So it makes things a lot easier to do that. And again, this is a IIS thing, man overboard, that is really a very big help. Yeah, next slide.
Yeah, but before going there, one thing about knowing your boat is that during the Garmin Round Denmark this year, it's still this year we did it.
Pardon, say once again.
What?
Yeah, say,
Can
please.
you hear me?
No, give me the question again, please.
No, it was a comment from my side, so it's not a question, Jan. So when I did the Garmin Round Denmark this year, I had a problem with water in the boat. The problem was that we had the valve in the front going tacking from Bornholm to Gedser. was that only had 500 liters of water in the boat. And I was not aware that the XP45 or 44 has that weakness, but I now know that you should close all valves so you don't have water in your boat on that. And remember, that was 4 hours of tacking in 1 to 2 meter high waves. I haven't tried that before in my XP44, so just imagine all these things you have to think about and prepare for anything. And that's when knowing your boat is very important. Okay, going to the next slide. That's about checking the boat. Jan has already talked about it, but before starting, you should really go through your boat very cautious. Remember, the race is a lot of nautical miles in open waters. So of course you should check your rig, your sheets, your winches, your battery, your monitors. Everything should be checked. Also your sails, even though you think everything is okay, 7 days at sea put a lot of stress on everything. So check and double check it. When it comes to electronics, I really recommend that you at least have 2 plotters on board. If you are not having that option, or even so, you should have a tablet with navionics on, so you at least know where you are. So think about what if my plotter dies? How do I get from point A to point B? Having a backup tablet or even a mobile phone with that feature and function would be a great help for you and the crew as well. And that counts single, double, and fully crewed as well. One thing I also learned is that you really need, as Jan said, know your plotter, prepare all the waypoints. And for fully crewed, I found that at least 3 people need to know how to navigate. The reason was when I was sleeping, I was black belt in my plotter, but when I was sleeping, I found that there was no people who could really use the plotter in a smart way. So when I found that out, the second day I educated additional 2 people. So when you're doing fully crewed, or if you are doing double hand, make sure that as many people as possible are able to work with the plotter. People would say, yeah, but I'm not the one with the helmet. No, but you have a responsibility even so. So just think about that. Communication equipment. Here the notice of race says that you should have a VHF. A strong recommendation from my side is also to have a speaker and a handset in the cockpit. This is an experience Jan and I had during Vigvisir, where we heard about a boat sinking nearby and we heard about a person falling into the water. If the VHF is only in the cabin, you are not able to hear it when you are steering the boat. So make sure that you have a speaker. The most optimal thing would be to have a handset in the cockpit, because then you can communicate without going to the cabin. The GSM phone, have at least 1 mobile phone on board, and if possible, a satellite communication device. The reason for the satellite communication device is that going in Vesterhavet and in Skagerrak, there are plenty of spots without any mobile phone coverage. So a satellite communication device is recommended. Either rent it or borrow it or buy it, depending on your budget. Then another thing that I also found is that having 7 days on the sea and with all the electronic and a fridge, and sometimes you also have a electric winch, you use a lot of power from the batteries. You should test how fast you can I can use my engine to charge the battery. You will get very disappointed, because on my XP44 it takes me 5 hours standard to charge the batteries. I found a solution for next time, because there are so environmental specification on an engine. So therefore, the charging of a standard diesel engine is set to a minimum. You can cheat that installation by having a special device on your engine, so it will charge 5 times faster. Just be aware that if you are consuming a lot of power and you're not like the single-handed going ashore for 8 hours, you need to find a good way of charging your battery when you are on the ocean. So test that one before leaving. It's easy to take a silver rudder without charging because that will take give and take between 20 to 24 hours. But here we are talking about 4 to 7 days at sea, and therefore you need to think that into your strategy. Okay, and the next one is for you and your beloved shore crew.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the shore crew for single-handers is later on, but yes, she is beloved. But you can actually think. I think you should think when sailing fully crewed, double-handed. Think as a shore crew, which is an extra crew member coming on board without adding any weight. And you should really, the shore crew should really know, of course, the boat and all the guys, girls on board the boat, so he can be helpful with all matters they might have. But the most important thing is, in my belief, that he should keep an eye on the weather pattern for you and on the competitors, and shall be ready with a pep talk when things are looking bad. And you should use the shore crew as you use everyone else in your crew. So the shore crew should be ready at any time of the day or night. That's important. And for the single handlers, that will come later.
Okay.
Next slide.
I've been asked to, my microphone is not working correct, so I've turned off my camera to see if the bandwidth can make it for me here. So I'll try to do my best to increase the quality here. Okay, personal equipment. This is for the members, and here you see 3 crew members from Xbox. For each of them, we have an AIS mobile device and a life jacket. One thing, when you have, like these guys have a life jacket with CO2, you also have to have an additional device for the CO2 device to charge the life vest. So if you fall in the water or if it's raining and suddenly that cartridge is empty, you need to have a backup if you have 7 days at sea. So you should have one or more of these devices on board to charge it. Personally, I had a life jacket like this, and then I had a standard life jacket as well if that one should give problems. Then there should be a lifeline for each individual person on board with 3 fixed points. And then what we also did is that we also had additional 3 in reserve if some of this should be lost or disappear in the anarchy in the boat. So we also have a reserve there. Then per person, and that counts for single, double, and also for fully crew, is to have good flashlights on board. And headlamp per crew member. And then one thing you also have to remember there is additional batteries. You really need to have enough battery to use the devices for 7 nights. And I'm not saying that you should use the flashlight all the time, but you should either have a rechargeable flashlight or have additional batteries. Then when it comes to medicine, it's pretty easy for the single-handed medicine, and they are the only one to take care of that. But if you have a double-hand crew or you have a fully crewed boat, then you need to have at least that the person who have the need for medicine or the security officer, which we pointed out on the boat, he needed to know if there was any issues that he or she should be aware of. So if you have medical needs, I haven't put on this list is also sun cream to put on when the sun is shining. So just be aware that, despite the fact it's August, it's Denmark, it could be sunny, and therefore you need your sun cream. Sleeping bag, of course, it says itself. Actually, on Xbox, we decided that everybody should have their own sleeping bag. It was a demand for the crew. I think it was because they didn't want to have my sleeping bag, so they wanted to have one per person. But again, you decide. Then the last point, Jan, as a single hand, he has the same clothing on for 6 days. Sometimes it could be interesting to change part of the crew, part of your clothing from underwears, or if you are falling in the water, it's nice to have dry clothes and so on. So on our boat, everybody had a small cabinet for additional clothing, and I checked that there was not enough, not too much clothing in there, but still it's nice to have, especially when the smell after 3 days starts wandering about the boat. It's nice to have some stuff like that. Okay, Jan, food storage.
I have a small input for this one here. Talking about the flashlights, a lot of people use very small LED lights, flashlights, and they can be very, very cool, and especially they can be so small that you really can't find them. So I figured out I use a much bigger flashlight. It's as big as a big thermo. I can always find it. That's a good thing. And it's rechargeable, so I don't run out of batteries. And the same for my headlamp, that's rechargeable, because at night, especially going upwind, I prefer to have the headlamp on for all times. It's easier to see the sails in that way, especially in Lillebælt and other places where things can get really strange. So it's nice. Just keep it up, keep the lights on at all times. Yeah, that's all.
Oh, I have that one. Sorry. So food storage, it should be focused on easy to serve, easy to handle. Even if you are multi-crew or double-handed, it needs to be easy. On our boat, we have breakfast. It's butter, cheese, ham, toast, tomato, yogurt. Depending on the crew, we can scale it up or down. Later on the call here, you will see how much food we put on board Xbox during the Garmin Round Denmark, but it really depends on how many people on board. Lunch for us was rugbrød, sandwich, ham, pâté, sausage, depending on the size of the fridge. Again, if you do racing for 7 days, and you should plan for 7 days, it's kind of easy if you're only one person, but if you're 7 people on board, you should be aware that you should have enough to eat. Of course, like Jan, you can have freeze-dried food on board or canned food. The freeze-dried food is an okay option, pretty expensive, but the only thing you need to add is water. What we did there was a little smarter, because we asked 5 crew members to cook a stove for each day, and then we freeze that down to minus 50 degrees Celsius. And then when we started, we put it into a flamingo box and had it in the bottom of the boat. So we heat it up. So that was also an alternative. Not everybody can freeze it down to 50 degrees minus, but movement, so the fruit doesn't get fresh bananas for 4 days and fresh apples for 7 days. Some of the fruit couldn't make it, but we learned it. So there's a lot of tricks in how to store it. Just think proactive, think in a smart way of storing and preparing the food. Then Jan, it's over to you.
Yeah, that's a big one, this one here. Yeah, the checklist, how to get prepared. The first point I really want to stress is at least one day before the race starts, the boat should be fully prepared and race ready. Before going on a long race or even the silver water or other single-hand races, I really prefer the day before the race to take a long walk, just going for myself, giving thoughts to which competitors I have, which strategy they might have, what is the pros and cons of their boats, thinking about the weather forecast, my own boat, what is my strong sides, what's my weak sides, especially compared to the competitors, and think about the sailing instructions, trying to imagine what we're going to happen for this race. I think it's a really good thing to get your mind race ready, which is important. I learned it the hard way on the Silverwater this year here, where the boat was nearly ready the evening before the race, but completely. We've been working on the boat for a complete week, and I wasn't ready at all to go racing, and that will make things difficult for you. And then running briefly through the checklist here, of course, you have to go through all the sails, the raking, make sure the electronic works, make sure your light works, your navigation lights, and you need to have an extra set of navigation lights. Might not be a full set of fixed installed lights, but you can have some very cheap ones, some backup lights which you can clip on very easily. That's a good thing, because it's such a pity if you have to retire from a race just because your lights isn't working. That is really, really bad. Sails, you need to have some repair stuff for your sails, to patches for the spinnaker, for the main sail or head sail, and of course all the sails should be ready to use quick use, and try to consider which sails I'm going to use for the first part of the race. Get them ready, put them up on top of the bunk, so you don't have to spend time looking for the sails you really do need to find. Talking also about sails, Genegers and code sails. Especially the code sails, I say, that's a must-have. If you don't have anything, when going with a boat with a jib, you don't have any overlapping head sails, a code 0, that's a must-have. It gives you easily 1 to 2 knots on top of your speed. It's easy to use. You install it on a furling system, and it's easy to handle. And I do often so that I put the sail and tie it on the deck, so I don't have to go down the boat and pick up the sails. So it's easier for me to put up the coat sail, and you can furl it so tight so it shouldn't catch any water, even in rough conditions going up when you have tied it to the foredeck. A little bit also that it says about fuel. You have to be aware of, if you're going for the offshore, you are sailing category 3 under special regulations, and you have to have fuel for no less than 5 hours of motoring, with a speed about 5-7 knots compared to your boat side. But at least that's the absolute minimum you should have fuel for 5 hours. And of course, all your batteries shall be charged. That might be the last thing you do before leaving the dock. The dock is unplugging your shore cable, so everything is up to level here. And you will have, of course, the water on board you needed. And as been talking to before, have a plan for all the maneuvers, how to do things. And when we are talking about maneuvers and how to handle the boat, you shall never ever go faster than your guardian angel can keep up with your pace, because things that will go wrong at some time. Your spinnaker or your head sail will drag in the water. In light conditions, easy peasy, but if you're going downwind 10, 15 knots, it's a nightmare to get them up again. But you can use the halyard to pull them up and secure them back on deck. You can have a Chinese jibe when the boat is lying flat on the water, the spinnaker around the rig, and yeah, a lot of mess there. But if you ever make the Chinese jibe by just tumbling onto the roof with your spinnaker up, the only thing you should do is ease the spinnaker halyard. Nothing else. Not the tack line, not the sheets, no nothing. Ease the spinnaker halyard and pull in the spinnaker. Also, what else can happen to you? Sudden tack due to autopilot error, or you are maybe pushing the remote too hard, so instead of getting it 10 degrees to starboard, you keep it down too much and boat suddenly tacks. It makes a lot of confusion on board, but just be prepared for it. And try to imagine whatever situation which can occur, and then try to figure out how to get things back under control again. It's very, very important to have this, because you can't imagine, as I said, you can't imagine what can go wrong, but you can really try to figure out all the situations you can come in, try to figure out how do I get back on track. So you have to remember there will always be a wave somewhere around the sail course with your name on. So you have to have a plan A, B, C, and D to get out of trouble again. And one of the main keys to keep out of trouble, especially going single double-handed, is to avoid being caught up with too much canvas up in the rig. Keep a look around the weather around you. Try to look at other boats inside of you. They might give you a warning about what is about to come. And better to take the spinnaker down 5 minutes too early than 30 seconds too late. It is so that the sailors always put up the spinnakers. The wind gods take them down. So look around you. Be prepared. And no matter how wrong things can go, as long as your boat is watertight and you're inside the lifelines, it can't get really ugly. So a little bit of relaxed you have to be as well. A little bit also about the sleep and resting periods here. I do when I go single-handed, a lot of power naps, about 15 minutes. I use my Garmin watch, which vibrates on my hand every 15 minutes during the whole race. And I found out that I can easily go sleep 15 minutes, be awake for a minute, and then fall asleep again for 15 minutes. That seems to be a good thing about the 15 minutes. That's just as far as you can see around you what might be coming up. But 15 minutes isn't, of course, not enough for the whole race. Sometimes you have to sleep for a longer period. I found out that 1.5 hours at least, that is good. You can count that when you have your resting times in either by anchor or in the harbor. And minimum sleep per day should be around 4 hours in total. My own maximum for the first part of the race, I found out I can stay awake for about 44 hours or so. But then I'm also at the absolute limit of what I can do, and my thoughts are not so optimal anymore. So it's better to get some rest. And also I found out that going from a normal sleep rhythm where you get 6 to 8 hours every night, and then to get divided into so many periods of sleeping, that takes some rehearsal. It's some time to get used to. So I think also it's a good thing, not even when you go sailing, but when you are back home, try to go for 2-3 days, just taking some power naps. It's always a good training, nearly as good as being on the water and sometimes. And whenever you have the opportunity, take a power nap. You will never regret it. You never know when you have the next chance. So take a nap, no matter where, no matter when. If you can do it, do it. And when sailing double hand, we have no watch schedule. We go for the longer sleeping periods whenever we can see an opportunity to do it. So the most exhausted and the one which is not mostly needed on deck can go sleeping first. For fully crewed, it's a different story. You have to have a watch plan. Make sure that there's enough competent crew on each watch plan so they can do the job running the boat properly. And make sure to appoint a watch captain for each shift, so which can double in for the skipper on the boat. Oh, we have a little bit here about tactics. We'll go through that a little bit later. We have been around that with the maneuvers and stuff like that. Keep an eye on the competition. And keeping an eye on the competition, of course, gives you an idea of how hard you do have to push your boat. If the competition is far ahead, you have to push harder. If they're far behind, you can leave your foot from the pedal a little bit, not to take any chances. And I found out also another thing for the talking weather forecast and stuff like that. I put bookmarks on my web browser on my phone and iPad for all the pages I need to visit for the weather reports, for the navigation warnings, for the sailing instructions, everything there. And also a little about the meals here. I especially like the freeze-dried food. I think it's light, it contains proteins and all the other stuff you need, and it really can be tasteful, and it's very, very easy to make. You can even make it by cold water, but then it's not so delightful anymore, but it's easy. And for a single-hander, you won't get ruined by buying 10 freeze-dried meals for a trip like that. That would be cool. So, and also I take, whenever I have the opportunity to make some hot water, I will always do that. Make it in a good thermos cans, can hold the water good enough for coffee for 24 hours. So that will be about my input for this slide. Next one to you, Henrik.
Yeah. So I put on my camera and my microphone, so let me know if there's a problem here. I'm getting back to the course here, just to take that as the foundation for the coming dialogue here. It is a long track. Even the inshore and the offshore, it's a long road. And as Jan said, there are some specific areas of interest, if I should put it that way, compared with like going in a straight line over the Atlantic. The longest line is between Bornholm and Gedser, that's 111 nautical mile, but we have to turn around buoys and islands and so forth. There are some specific areas, and I've just pointed them out, some of them as a directional guidance. The first one comes for the offshore guys, and that is up at Hansen, where there's a lot of fishing boats. The fishing boats are not used to having sailors passing their way, so they don't, how can I put it in a frank way, don't give a shit. They have their course, and normally there's no boat doing races here, so you should be the watch captain there. Be aware of that. They will not look for you because you are not normally there, but the fish are normally there, so be aware of the big ships at anchor up there, and there's a lot of lights. So what we also found was when we had the inshore and we came up there, it was very difficult to identify the buoy that we had to turn at Skagen. And that's because there was so much light, so much traffic, so much other boats up there. So you really had to be aware of that up there. Then the next point of interest is when you start in Aarhus, here in the sea between Grenaa and up to Læsø, there's a lot of windmills. They are either already established or they are being constructed. So just be aware that the windmills that are there, you have them on your chart. If they are under construction, there's a lot of workboats there, so they will. You will be the one responsible for not hitting those guys. The next point of interest is when you get into Øresund. Coming from the Swedish naval, they are monitoring boats, and if you go into the traffic zone, they might fine you. They might go on board and tell you, here's a fine on 1,000 euro, and if you can't pay, we will bring you into Helsingborg. So be aware that despite the fact that the notice of race don't have any recommendation on this area, the Swedish control guys will be there. And to be fair, I don't think we should go into the traffic zone, especially at Øresund, at the start at Øresund, and also here at Falsterbro. Be aware, there's a lot of big boats and big traffic there. So you're the small one, you're the maneuverable one. The bigger boats, they come from behind, and they will, if you're sailing 2 nautical miles, 2 knots, they will go 14 knots, and they will be there before you even think about it. So plan for it and don't go into the traffic zone, and don't go there. It's strong recommendation. Of course, this year there was an advantage going there because the current was with you, and there was better weather there or better wind condition, but stay out of that zone in the beginning of Øresund and also at the festival. Then we get to the next area of interest here. Remember some years ago we had a collision between a Chinese big boat and another boat, and it ended up with the Chinese boat sinking. So right here in the northern part here between Ystad and Bornholm, there's a very high traffic load of big ships going to the Baltics, and also boats going through Storebælt and Øresund, and even through Kieler Canal. If they go to Russia or Finland, they will pass there as well. So be aware about the traffic here. Then when you get to Christiansø, then we could make a lot of jokes that we should be careful with with the gas pipes out there. We are not even close, so we are not in a danger zone compared with the Russian gas pipes. But be aware that there might be some fuss out there. Another reason for putting Christiansø on the attention area is that there are some reefs out there that you should be aware of, and you should really read your map when you get at that point. So if you're tired, open your eyes when you get to Christiansø. There are some reefs that is pretty damn dangerous. The next point of interest is this year we met some guys building windmills here in this area. And they actually had a very active boat pushing you away, more or less. They have a watch captain calling you on VHX, calling you and ask you to go around the construction. But there's a lot of construction of windmills farms out here in this area as well. Then when you get to Femern, first of all, here at Gedser, there's a lot of windmills. I don't think they're building windmills right now. So all the windmills here are in the Garmin maps. But when you get to Femern, they are still constructing the tunnel there. So we might next year see a lot of building activity there as well. So be aware, and I know that Morten is evaluating to put that into the notice of race, that we should respect whatever is being built down here and whatever the status is. So just be aware that's a point of interest. The last point of interest I put on here is at Bagenkop, and the reason for that is that all the traffic that goes up and down in Storebælt, they're actually crossing down here, either here for the inshore and up here for the offshore. But be aware, we have heavy traffic and it's very narrow. So the big boats, they're not really able to maneuver in that area. So you are the small, agile one, so take consideration there. The last point I put is just a warning for guys doing the inshore. Here in the Lave and close to Jutland, there are some very shallow water. I can tell you that it's less than 224 centimeters deep because I found some stones there. So be aware that there's some specific areas of that part of the course that you should be aware of. Next time I will choose a different route. So that's just a point of interest for you. So that's based on my experience that, despite the fact that it's a long road, a long trip, there are some interesting areas for you on the navigation. And of course, like Vestas, you never know if you're off course and you forget an island, you will find the island or the reef around the island. So you should always be aware here. Next couple of slides, I will not spend so much time on that, but in the slide deck, you have currents in here for depending on the wind direction, and here you have it for greater belt. That's for the guys doing the offshore, and for the guys doing the inshore, there are some currents changes in the Lillebælt. But that's just to have in the slide deck afterwards. Then I will hand it over to you, Jan.
Yeah, about the single hand stuff. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah. First of all, the rest time rule here. The most important thing about that one is that both you as a sailor and your shore crew fully understand the rules. They can be misunderstood. I've learned that. So take a close look to it. Make a timeline on a piece of paper, noting all the days you think the race will go. Make a mark for whenever each time slot ends and begins, because they are, even before the race start, they are, you can see what they are, and which hours you have to be, you have to go and take your rest. The one for Skagen, that is quite easy peasy. You have to be there for 16 hours, and then you can go on. But the other ones here, the 44 hours periods, take a close look how they work, and write it down on a piece of paper. Make a big note of it. Put it on your chart table so you will never be in doubt on how they work. Because when you really need them most, you are tired, and so it's easy to have them on a piece of paper, so you can always relate to that. And it is so when you have this 8-hour stop, you will at your best get 6 hours of sleeping. It takes you at least 1 hour to get the boat into the harbor, to make sure that everything is okay, and put in your shore power, which is very important to remember. And you have to wake up at least 1 hour before you should leave the dock. It should be possible to get something to eat before that. But if you're comfortable with it, you can anchor instead of going into the harbor. You don't lose so much time when laying at anchor. But on the other hand, it makes life a bit more difficult for your shore crew if they're going to assist you in any way. You can also come in a situation where the wind dies in between, let's say, Bornholm and Gedser, and you really can't go to a harbor or preferred anchor place. The Baltic is too deep, so you cannot anchor out there. So you could just always bring you a mooring hook. So if you can come by a big buoy, whatever which one it could be, have a metal mooring hook so you can hook onto the buoy. Maybe the authorities said it's not okay, but before they find you, you will be off again. Because coming up alongside with a buoy and try to put a piece of rope on it, that's not possible. So that's a good option to do so. And also when you should leave the harbor again, at least 20 minutes before your scheduled time of departure, you should have everything in place. Simply be ready to go, get your mind in what is coming up here. And the last thing you should do before leaving the dock or the harbor, disconnect your shore power. That's important. And also I did so the races I had. I have made a laminated pre-made note to put on the boat, informing the harbor master and other sailors about what I'm doing, so they don't have to knock on your boat in the middle of your sleeping period to collect harbor duty. That's about the Western rule. Next slide here. Yeah, and for the shore crew, that will be your very, very best friend through the whole race. And just to be sure, I've married mine, so I know where she is now, and what she knows what I can't do. But also it's important that you are allowed to have more than one shore crew. There's a P1, which is the preferred one for contact, but you're allowed to have two, as you can see here in the slide. I had Helle, and then we had Morten in the back of the boat. It's good to have two. They can help each other. They can supplement each other in the weather forecast, and they can talk together about what's going to happen next. And so it's good. It's good. And whenever possible, they should be in the harbor at your stopovers. That is such an important thing. It's a far greater help than you can ever imagine. I had one stopover in Rødbyhavn where I came in with a broken mainsail halyard, and they came with some warm food. I could go down to sleep, and they have replaced the mainsail halyard and fixed the whole boat, so I got a fully 6-hour rest there. If I had been there alone, I could spend easily 1-2 hours just replacing this halyard, and first of all, how to get hold of a new spare parts. And yeah, a good shore crew, that's so important. They have to know you, they have to know your boat. And that is, I think that's just about it. If you can just
remember, also the shore crew should also be the connection to the race committee or the race guidance. So they should be 24/7 in contact with the Garmin Round Denmark team. So that's also their role, being between you and the Garmin guy. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one is the chop. I think you have covered a lot of this already, Jan.
Yeah, I think we have already been there, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So getting to the next part of the session here is the double-handed. And Jan and I discussed a long time how much can we actually talk about the double-handed, because a lot of this is actually covered by the single-handed. And there's one major reason for that. Of course, you have to train and train and train double-handed, meaning that you should be able, you should know each other, you should be able to know the strength and the weakness of everybody else on for your counterpart. My strong suggestion is to participate in a classic Fyn Rundt or Fyn Cup as a warm-up, just to make sure that you are fully aligned. Things happen when you get tired. And normally there's no fighting between Jan and me, but after 22 hours at sea, sometimes it could be very interesting dialogue. Another thing that you should also be aware of, that if you are sailing double-handed, and in average, let's say you are sleeping 6 hours a day per person, that actually means that the boat is being handled single-handed for 50% of the time. So you could say double-handed is so much safer than single-handed. Yeah, right, but they don't have 8 hours sleep in Skagen. They don't have 8 hours sleep within the next 44 hours window. So you have to include a lot of single-hand maneuvers when you're doing your double-handed. My strong recommendation is also, like Jan, on the single hand, have a shore crew. They can assist you in the harbor unless you go into a harbor for emergency repair or stuff like that. But they can for sure assist you in weather forecast, telling where are the competitors. They can also discuss with you what's the best tactic and so forth. So they will be there for you as well, not physically, but remote. And for such a long race, for 7 days, it can be just as critical as for the single-handed sailors to have a good shore crew when doing double-handed. So that was the part for double-handed. Of course, of similarities between double-handed and single-handed, and there's also parts of the double-handed that reach into the next section, and that's the fully crewed. So the next couple of slides is designated for fully crewed racing, and it's mainly based on the experience we had last year on Xbox, but also racing over the last 20 years or so in shorter distances. One thing that is important when it comes to multi-crew is that when you set the crew, don't just take captains or helmsmen on board. You need to take people, of course, who you know, so you know their strength and their weakness. You also need people on board who knows the boat as you, as good as the captain, as good as the owner. Because remember, you will be sleeping, or you should be able to hand over responsibilities to someone else. You need to trust them. So you need different people on board. Having 8 people, 9 people, or 10 people on board also means that everybody should have good social skills. I'm saying that not just for the fun, but again, a big portion of the strategy for having a fully crewed or multi-crew for Garmin Round Denmark is to have interesting people on board that can talk to other people, because sailing for 700 nautical miles means that you need to have a lot of discussion. You're not just sitting looking at the water. You can chit-chat with each other and all that. And there's different ways of taking care of that. You also need good muscle powers. You need people with strength, because if you have to handle sails and the boat in rough conditions, you also need to have people who are able to do that. And then when we had this 9 people, we had 3 good helmsmen. I tried to put myself on that list, but we definitely had 3 good people. And the helmsmen were the captain on that shift, and they were the responsible for that shift. I will get back to that as well in a little short while. But you need not just 1 good helmsman, you need actually 3 if you have 10 people on board. We also identified a SOME, a social media responsible person. And for us elderly guys, it doesn't mean a shit. Why bother? But what we actually managed to do was, during our Garmin Race Denmark this year, we posted 10 times on the road. We sent out videos, and we communicated with not just everybody, but also the widows on land. Sorry, the wives, the spouses, so they could follow us. But it's also a way of communicating. It's going good, and also a smart way of doing some commercial for the race. But it's really a good idea with mixed background. It shouldn't be 10 engineers or 10 salespeople. Mix it to have the right crew. Then this schema in the bottom of the screen is part of the planning package that we'll send out to everybody as well. It is important to know the crew, what is their role, what is their main responsibility, what is the mobile phone. But it's just as important that we have shore contact for every individual person when we do the racing. Remember, if someone get hurt, or we need to have medical assistant, or we need to have a chat with the wife for whatever reason, or the spouse for whatever reason, it's always nice to have a contact. And it's also nice for the shore people, being the spouses on land, to know who else is on shore and how can I call them if something is wrong. And then we also use this to make sure that everybody had an AIS mobile device, MOC device. And for those guys who didn't have it, we bought it from other crews. So we managed to have 9 man on board devices for everybody on board by borrowing, and we actually also bought 2, and then extra CO2 cartridge for the life vest. Find a way to get it to them. It is important. Then when you have so many people, you have a lot of people to feed, a lot of mouths to close, or keep going. So what we actually did was that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we made sure that we had different people. We mixed people for their responsibility. So people prepared this stew. It was mørbrad goulash, chili curry, and mørbrad, I don't know how to translate that, but we had different things to eat every day, but we also had different people preparing it for the team. So it wasn't just the same person doing the feed. A funny thing, remember, if you're 7 days at sea with 9 people, sometimes it can be pretty boring. So what we actually did there was that we had people responsible for entertainment. So once a day, it ranged from champagne without alcohol, pre-made cookies. One disaster we had was popcorn. The popcorn was put into the anchor compartment in front of the boat. Unfortunately, that one got wet. So when we tried to get out the popcorn, we found 100 liters of water in the front of the boat. But every day we had a funny surprise for everybody, just for the fun of it, and it gave a good social dialogue on the way. Then the different tasks we had on navigation, we had 2 main responsible, wind and weather, 2 main responsible. They should all the time know what is the weather the next half day. On the sails, people who are responsible for making sure the sails is okay. And then the rooster, the back plan, I will get back to that. The shore manager, we had 2 contact person in there. And then the SOME, we had Lasse and myself, and communication was Lasse. It's like driving a business, a small business, but just be aware that everybody should know their role. Here is our suggestion for a food plan. Remember, if you have 9 big guys who's going to be on the water for 8 days, that demands a lot of butter and a lot of cheese and a lot of eating. So this is a spreadsheet we developed. It will be shared as well. So we just make sure that we had enough milk, we have enough bread and butter and so forth. And we actually stored that in a bag, in a plastic bag. So day by day, we took up a new bag of bread or a new bag of havregryn. So that was fresh. Of course, the fridge had hold the milk and the meat and all that. So we just made sure that we had it in an easy way. And then coffee for a multi-crew where we have coffee fanatics. What we actually did there, the most coffee fanatic person, he became responsible for making sure there was a coffee around the clock for the rest of the crew, because that guaranteed that there would be coffee, and he couldn't complain. He was responsible. So we also share this spreadsheet for you guys as well. Then this is just a funny part, food selection. If you have 9 people, they might have any kind of food they don't like, candies they don't like. So we made a roster saying, what do you like, what don't you like? And when you have 7 people on board, we also had reusable drinking cans for everybody. Otherwise, we would end up having an environmental disaster. So each person actually had their own drinking bottle with name on, and of course they need to pour water into that themselves. But it was actually a good idea that everybody had their bottle for drinking water, because then we didn't need to have a lot of bottled water on board. Of course, we had bottled water as a backup, but we asked everybody to be in control of their own can. Then the duty schedule, Danish vagtplan. We had 9 crew members. That meant that we appointed 3 skippers. We had 3 good guys who knew the boat with muscles and had the insight of how to shift sails and so forth. And then we had 3 light guys. Light is not to push on them, but they didn't know the boat as good as the rest of the guys. And these 3 were mixed throughout the 7 days. So I made sure that we didn't have the good crew. They had they shifted between 3 and 4 hours shift, and the same for the light guys as well. In this way, we made sure that everybody sat was on the boat or on the active duty in a mixed way, so they didn't get tired of each other. The way we also did it, we split between on duty. So we had always 3 people on duty. They should be on deck unless there was no wind. Then we had standby people who had the on duty for 3 hours, and then they had 3 hours standby, and then they go for 3 hours sleep. Because in this way, if you are in heavy conditions, the on duty and standby are on deck. This people, they should go sleeping, and I'm kind of mandating that, because remember, it's a 24/7. It's like having a factory running around the clock. So when you are set to sleep, you should be downstairs relaxing, sleeping. For the first 30 hours, 40 hours, that was kind of difficult. Yeah, but I don't want to go there. I'm not tired. Well, go down there anyway. We want, in 40 hours, we want fresh people as well. So be very hardcore when you sleep and you have a crew with 9 people. You go sleeping. It's not, it's not an option to sit up, because we want you to be there in 4 hours or 3 hours again, fresh from the cabin. Some people, they saw this is the labor law. I can go down and sleep now. Well, we had to remove the spinnaker. We have a problem. And other people said, I don't want to go. It's so fun up here. But then you, as a captain, you mandate. And after 3 days, it was not an issue anymore. Everybody was tired. But in the first 2 days, everybody wanted, I can do it. I don't want to sleep. Well, like a factory, you need to run this in a very hardcore way. Then the social events. Actually, here you have our candy shop. First of all, we made a little fun of the candy, because having candy in a room on board the boat is like having money somewhere. People want to go and grab the money, and they want to eat it. They don't want to eat the food. They will go for the candy. So what we actually did was that each crew member had their own bag of candy that would be only accessible for once a day, where they could pick one thing. It could be a bag of piratas or a bag of skolekridt, or a mixed bag of something, and then the bag would be closed down again. In that way, we could control when we took the candy. We didn't take the candy 1 hour before the food would be served, because then people wouldn't eat the food. So we made sure that it was between lunch and dinner. So we made sure that here's your bag of candy, and then they should control it themselves. It is like a kindergarten, I know, but you need to control it. Otherwise, there will be no candy or no eating of the real dinner. Then this is a kind of a joint slide, Jens. So what you said is always be ready for the unplanned event. The first on the left was a guy who was seasick 3 times. You should, he shouldn't be sitting there without a lifeline. And whenever he was there was an appointed person to take care of him, to make sure that he was back in power. We had, unfortunately, 700 liters of water in the boat. That was because of the wash in the toilet room in the front, where the lever was not closed. So I had a hard learning on that one. It took some time to take the 700 liters out of the boat. So again, make sure you know your boat and you know what levers to close. Then later, we found that we had this 100 liters of water in the stern. And suddenly I had 4 people crawling around the boat for emptying that one. And I was not actually the one taking this picture because I was sleeping. But when I came up and saw 4 people running around in the front of the boat, I said only 2 people, the rest stay behind. So when you have things to fix it in a orderly manner. And then we saw pirate ships, and there's always something happening on board a boat. So the longest checklist we can give you guys is the checklist of all the unplanned events that will happen during this race. So I think that's more or less ended the prepared material from our side. Just before the call, I visited the Garmin Round Denmark site, and the status as 5 o'clock today was that we are only 21 participants right now. Of course, I do hope that we will have more competitors in both inshore and offshore, and single, double, and fully crewed. And I know that Morten is trying to motivate with an early bird. So be aware that there's an early bird with 50% discount until end of day, the 12th of December. Morten, if you will put some words to this, is that a real deadline or is that just artificial?
No, that's definitely for real. What's shown on that slide is as it is. That it will there will still be a discount, but it will be half of what it is in the early bird period. So it is, of course, because we have done so many changes this year with the date, with the starting, the lineup before the race, the invention, or what we should call it, the intervention of the ORC club, and then also on the price structure, because we had a lot of critics about the fully crewed participants. So we tried to meet the fully crewed audience with both the ORC club and also with a new kind of price structure. So this is what you see. So you will, even though you are 15 people on board, you will still only pay for the first 4 people. So of course you can say that's not justice to the single-handed and double-handed community, but somehow they don't find the expenses as hard as it is when you have typically one skipper that will pay for 14 other guys. That will be a bit of a bill for him to join the race. So yes, we really do hope that many more people will join us than so to speak, only 21 boats. But yeah, as you say, we have the deadline on the 12th, and we are pretty confident that this deadline will get more people motivated to join the race.
Okay. If you have any question about the pricing or the early bird or anything, that's Morten.
Yeah, I'll try to answer for sure.
Yeah. Okay. That leaves us, if there's any unanswered questions, we still have Jan online. He hasn't slept yet, and Helle hasn't confiscated him yet. Are there any additional questions? Or should we just say we are ready to sail? We are ready to race. Philip, do you have a question? You are so silent.
No, I can't talk all the time, Henrik. It's excellent.
Well, when I listen to you and your PowerPoints, you always have a lot of wise things to say.
Very good presentation, really good. And well done to Morten. Great race. Looks like it'll be a lot of fun.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm starting this in the next couple of years, not this year.
So my humble ask to all of you is, participate. It's a nice race. You will be tested even more than in Silver Rudder. You will be tested even more than in many other races. It is a test of you as a person. You will be tested just as much as Fastnet. You will be tested more than Sydney Hobart. Even the Rolex Middle Sea, Gotland Rund, Sjælland Rund, and Silver Rudder. Sorry, Max. Sorry, Philip. It is a longer race. It is more stressful. It's a tougher game, and I can only recommend to participate. It will give you an experience for life. despite if it's single hand, double hand, or multi-crew. We are still talking about all the crazy stories we had as a multi-crew for Garmin Round Denmark. And trust me, there was a lot of stupid things happening on the way. So I can only recommend to join forces and join the race. What we will do after the race is that the recording of this session will be posted. The PowerPoint that we have been used will be posted on Jan's site. The planning document, the checklist, and everything related to this presentation will also be posted and shared, so you can steal with pride whatever kind of section you want. But the initiative that is on your side is to make sure that you enroll for the race. And then, of course, as Jan said, show up and start and go through the race. That is on your shoulder. By that, I wish you a... Oh, there's a question from Morten. You know, Morten, in team, there's actually a way of raising your hand, but fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with. I see the hand sign. Yeah, okay. But I would just really like to thank the both of you for doing this presentation. I think it has been a really deep insight in what it takes, and I think most people, kind of consider, as you say, you mentioned different races, but you don't really consider how long this race really is and what it takes to prepare. And also, Jan, your insights on all your preparations on going single-handed, it's really useful. And I posed a question also about the shore crew, and I'm really happy that you went into the depth with that, the importance of that. So thank you guys for doing this presentation, and I definitely hope that it will bring some more what should we say, recognition for the guys that actually first make it to the finish line, and then, or to the start line, and then afterward that make it to the finishing line afterwards. I think it's a big achievement to doing those things. So thank you, Henrik and Jan.
You're welcome.
What kind of tracker will be used in 2023? What is the tracking system? Morten, that's one for you.
That will be track, and it will be. We are not really sure yet if we will go with the GSM telephone solution, as you know from other races that are closer to the coast. It appears that there are a few holes in the transmission in part of Kattegat and maybe also in the part of the Baltic Sea. We could maybe live with that. It depends on what we choose to go with. But the thing is that we could kind of make it as as you know from the ocean race, where it is a kind of a stealth mode thing, that when you enter these fields, then you are in the dark for a few hours before you pop up again further down the shore. So it would be a track system, either satellite or GSM based.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, guys, can you have a nice Christmas time, and see you all at Silver Rudder, I presume, but also at Garmin Round Denmark later next year.
And Vigvisir.
And Vigvisir. Oh, sorry, yes, I forgot that one. Okay. Bye.
Cool guys.